Welcome to the Live Well, Perform Better podcast, brought to you by Below the Line. My name is David Duggan, and I am part of a team made up of experts from the worlds of business, elite sport, adventure, and health and well-being. We are coaches, mentors, and advisors to some of the world's biggest companies and organisations, as well as smaller businesses, entrepreneurs, and people looking to make their mark on the world. Our guiding mantra at Below the Line is Live Well, Perform Better. What does that mean, you might ask? Good question. Maybe the easiest way to describe it from our perspective is finding the formula that works for you when it comes to things like looking after your physical and mental health, running your business, developing your career, leading your people, or simply being able to show up as brilliantly as possible into your own life, both for yourself and those around you. That's why each week I sit down with a member of our team or an invited guest for a conversation that focuses on the question, what do the words live well, perform better mean to you? This question is a way into exploring with people from a range of different backgrounds, industries and disciplines. What are the practices, techniques, habits or ideas that they use to help them to show up and be at their best in all areas of their lives, whether that's as CEOs, leaders or managers, or as parents, family members or friends. We keep it short and sweet so that you can extract all the good stuff and get on with the rest of your day, and hopefully put some of our knowledge, experience and expertise into play for yourself. This week I'm joined by a very special guest, Jack Kavanagh. Jack is a man who wears many hats. He is a performance and resilience coach, community pharmacist, podcaster and board member of various organisations and charities, all while living with a life-altering spinal cord injury that he sustained 10 years ago, and which he has spoken about movingly in his Fearless Like a Child TEDx talk. For this conversation, I wanted to understand how someone living with the challenges he faces on a daily basis prepares, manages and sustains himself to be able to be at his best and play all the roles he plays as well as he does. For Jack, this means placing an emphasis on his personal health, cultivating strong relationships in his life, and finding and doing meaningful work. And in this conversation, you will hear him expand on these things, as well as what he has learned from trying to find what he calls the magic in the messiness of life. Please subscribe at www.belowtheline.ie, where you can stay up to date with our podcast, as well as our exclusive online events and sessions, including our Press Pause coaching community and our story coaching programs. Thanks for listening, and see you next week. Yeah, okay. Well then, tell me that. Why do you do what you do?
The reason I do what I do is, like, fundamentally, life has shown me just how incredible people are. We've all got this little gem of magic within us, and sometimes life gets in the way. Sometimes that gets covered up, whether it's things we were told when we were kids, or the environment we have around us, or challenges that present themselves, like my spinal cord injury. Or maybe it's the stories that we allow enter between our two ears, or the way that we treat our body. We have that little spark of magic in us when we're born, and we see it every time we look at a child. And at some point, that starts to get clouded over a little bit for many of us. And so I think in the different work that I'm doing, it's about maybe allowing people to see a little bit more of that and finding ways to empower and enable that.
Yeah, and as you were explaining there as well, you do wear a couple of different hats, but I guess all of those roles, a healthcare practitioner, board member, facilitator, coach, they probably all kind of sit under that umbrella, do they, for you?
Absolutely. What are the odds? Well, I can tell you what the odds are. It's 1 in 400 trillion. 1 in 400 trillion are the odds of any one of us being born. That's absolutely remarkable. And yet I'm as susceptible as anybody to getting caught up in the stories that might go on inside our head that aren't supportive or generative or those kinds of things. And regardless of those things, there's things which exist in our society which mean that many people don't have the opportunity to express that that germ of magic inside them, or the seed of magic, um, and to allow that to see that fulfill its potential. So, in whatever way uh, it's possible to do it, it's about empowering that and the person. And yes, that can fall very nicely into different things, which is kind of the beauty of it if you carry that with you across different areas. And so I suppose really the core of it is to inspire people that exists, and then do things in the world that make that real for people.
In terms of, below the line and your relationship with it, but our strap line is kind of live well and perform better. I'm really curious to know what's your interpretation of that.
Mm. Well, I love it. First of all, it speaks slightly differently to everyone, I'm sure, as to what that means. But for me, I sort of think about values when I start with this piece. Um, and I suppose I have three areas that are dominant in my values and or umbrella. And the first is my health. The second is relationships, and the third is meaningful work. And the reason I start with health is because my life has shown me very visibly, and in very real ways, that if you don't have your health, everything else falls apart. And like living with a spinal cord injury as I do, maybe I need to navigate that health road a little bit more diligently than some others. And so that's kind of the foundation on which the house is built for me. Um, and then the walls of the house are the relationships that I have. And you know, you think about simple things like at the end of it all, uh, who do you like? What do you want? It's you don't bring anything with you except the memories of the time spent, the experiences. And you would hope to have a tribe of people that want to be at your bedside on your last day. And I think relationships are really important. In the times that make or break us, there's people around us, and that's really important for me. The way in which I'm nurturing or showing up for those. And then the third piece for me, which maybe you can call the lid on the house, or what inhabits the rooms within the house, is meaningful work. And more recently, I'm giving myself permission to follow my nose on that, because as we just said, I am currently wearing a few hats, and I've started to become a little bit more okay with with that, because all of those things are contributing and contribute to me feeling like I'm expressing myself into the things that are important to me, and adding value, hopefully, in doing so. So when I think about what does it mean to live well and perform better, I need to be filling those various cups. I need to be regularly investing in my health. And if I can do that in a way of building relationships, whether that's going off-road biking with people that I care about, like that's incredible. If I'm regularly um, creating space for relationships, not just personal, but in a professional context, and nurturing those, and not looking for just a quick win, but actually how can I build this as an ongoing relationship where it's a win-win and mutually beneficial, and we're growing together. That's incredible. And they're the seeds, like the relationships. It is a relational world. We're constantly in relationship with ourselves and the world around us. So if you're nurturing both side of that coin, you're going to put yourself in a position to make things happen and to move the needle, which is ultimately your performance, isn't it? Um, how you're showing up for the things that are important to you. Um, and so, yeah, regularly making small investments in the first two foundational areas for me allows me to go out and show up at my best in the other areas.
just to pick up on something you were saying there about kind of following your nose on that related to the type of work, what made you come to that realization, and what has been the benefit of kind of maybe it almost sounds to me like letting go a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's an element of going a bit easier on myself, you know, maybe not having to have it figured out, but allowing the magic to come from the messiness of it. And that is the blend that I'm drawn to at the moment, is having an involvement in a few things. And I, for a long time, was kind of coming from a reference point where I said, no, there needs to be the one thing. And actually, what makes it interesting for me is the synergy and the cross pollination between the various things. Um, and so allowing myself to do that has, like you said, it's been maybe a letting go or a giving of permission. And that's actually, if you come back to the idea of the seed of magic, that's watering a couple of different seeds within me, which is really nice.
And you touched on this already, but obviously for you, the foundations of your house, if you like, is your health. So I'm just wondering, as I've heard you talk about this before, just some of the practices, the habits, behaviors that you engage in to kind of help with that foundational part of you.
Yeah. So I think about this as like, you can almost think about it as relationship, and a very good phrase that comes from the below the line gang is how are you showing up for yourself? And so in my morning, I really think about that, you know. The reality is that I need a bit of help getting out of bed in the morning and getting up and started. But some of the first things that I do is all of the listeners hopefully can step out of the bed on their own accord. But for me, after I get a shower and get dressed, I'll stand into a standing frame straight out of my bed. And as a wheelchair user, getting upright and stretching out my body and challenging my blood flow and giving my organs the chance to be upright and stretched out is fantastic. And it's a psychological win as well, which is great. And I feel more connected that way. And I'll do that for 5 to 10 minutes. And then I'm generally going into either um, maybe a 5 kilometer to 10 kilometer, depending on how long I have spin on my bike on a roller that I have in my room. So it's a hand bike, or else I'll do 10 to 15 minutes of simple wrist weights, and all that is it's a short enough period that it's hard for me to say I can't do that. I don't have time to do that. So I lower the bar for success on that. And that means that I'll do one or other of those things most mornings. And me consistently doing that is waking my body up. It's connecting me with my body early in the day, and it's getting me out of my head a little bit. Which is, they say the longest journey you take is the 18 inches from your head to your heart. Um, that's something I think all of us need to quiet down, is that crazy monkey mind, and this is some of my way of doing it. And then when I've done that short bit of exercise, or a longer period, depending on how my day is structured, but having that sense of connection with my body is really important in the morning. And generally, I'll couple that before engaging in the day's work with some kind of mindfulness practice. And that might be as little as 2 minutes before uh, opening the laptop or heading out the door in the car. But on the days that allow, it's generally 10 minutes of mantra based uh, meditation, where as I breathe in, I'm thinking of I am. And when I breathe out, I'm thinking here now. And I'm just repeating that again and again and again getting distracted, coming back to it when I've realized I've been distracted, and I'm thinking about the squirrel running up the tree or whatever it might be, or I'm thinking of all the things that I haven't done or have to do, and I'm just coming back to I am here now, breathe in, breathe out, you know. That's really effective for me, as is maybe if I've got 2 minutes just tuning into my body and doing a body scan. And if I've got a little bit longer, particularly on the weekends, I like to do breath work, which is maybe a little bit more vigorous um, way of connecting in with the body again. And all of that just clears my head a little bit and allows me to show up more effectively then. And otherwise, I'm distracted and my mind is pulling me in different directions before I go into the day. And so you can think of that, all of that is showing up for yourself. And for me, on the days or the weeks where I fall out of those things, or I come up with good reasons, which generally aren't good reasons not to do the thing, that's when I start to notice it. We even chatted about this beforehand. It's after a little while of not doing those things which are supportive of you that you realize, God, that really played into my well-being, which knocked into how I responded to the stressors that came up, which knocked into how present I was with my work or with the people I was engaged with. And it's all interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of your work now, whether that's board member or speaking or coaching, what do you see as the main, whether it's health, well-being, or performance challenges with the people or the organizations that you work with? What's coming up now, or what do you see most commonly?
Two things I would say predominantly is languishing and distraction. So before COVID was ever a thing, distraction was the number one. And I can speak to this as challenges coming up with organizations that I work with and individuals just feeling pulled in so many directions. And I've experienced it many times myself. So distraction being the first one, but through the COVID pandemic, and this is a phrase that psychologist Adam Grant really threw back into our public narrative, but is the idea of languishing, and he calls it the forgotten middle child of mental health. And it's that sense that kind of with COVID going on so long and the pandemic going on so long, we don't know whether we're coming or going or fully in or fully out. And so we feel in this maybe limbo period and or zone. And it can be epitomized by the phrase, how are you feeling? A bit meh or grand, which Irish people have an awful habit of coming back with. And it is that grand, you're not necessarily on fire or flourishing. And it's not that you're completely burned out or really struggling, but you're just in that kind of wandering space where you're plodding along and maybe a little bit aimless. And that place is like where kind of the quiet discontent or whatever starts to seep in. And it's neither an amazing place to be or an awful place to be, but it's just meh. And I think in our ordinary, well, what used to be normal, we would much more often be on the journey towards a higher point or a lower point. If you think about the heartbeat analogy, of a higher moment or a lower moment in the heartbeat, whereas now it's like our experience is maybe a little bit being dampened. And so instead of having those sharp highs and lows, they've rounded out and we're closer to the center point. And so people are feeling just a bit meh.
And then picking up on that, this my last question. For anyone who's feeling that meh sensation, Or maybe listening to this and wondering, how do I make a change to whether it's my life, my health, my career, or whatever. What's the one piece of advice or the best piece of advice you could give someone about where they could start on that journey for themselves?
Yeah, I would encourage anybody to take out, and regardless of whether you're in either of those states, but particularly if you're in the languishing state, take out a piece of paper and write down what makes me come alive. And think about people, think about places, think about experiences. And as you answer that question for yourself, try to aim for maybe 20 things. And initially you'll say, "Oh, I can't do that." Just keep going until you hit 20. And it's by stretching yourself that you'll uncover the gems. But when we more regularly incorporate those things into our life, actually they're things in which we experience flow quite often. And flow is this idea of being completely in the moment. You lose a sense of awareness of time. Quite often, there are periods where you get so engrossed in the person or the place or the thing that you're doing, that you might forget some of your bodily sensations. Like you realize, God, I haven't gone to the bathroom in ages and I'm bursting for a wee. Or it might be a case that you're so enthralled in the activity or the conversation or the experience, um, that hours go by, or half an hour goes by, and you don't even realize. Um, those kinds of experiences, people, places, are the things that are in many ways the antidote to languishing, um, and that really kind of can revitalize us. Flow has been the amount of flow we experience in our life has been shown to be one of the biggest predictors of our well-being. And when we're well and all of those things, we're better able to focus, and so distraction becomes less of an issue, and so on. So I would answer that question and think about how can you maybe instill a few more of those things that make you come alive a little bit more regularly, whether it's spending time with a person that comes up on that list, or visiting the place that comes up on that list, or engaging in an activity. And uh, some of the markers of those experiences, people, places, um, are the first piece being that it comes with a sense of challenge where we can experience progress. So maybe in a relationship that's asking new questions, getting really curious, and there's progress in the relationship because now we found new ground, or now we're trying to understand each other a bit better, or whatever. In terms of a place, um, a place might be that it really helps you to connect to yourself for the moment. For me, being by the coast and that long line of horizon, that triggers the second important thing, which is mindfulness. Um, and the third important thing is that it matters. It matters maybe for its own sake. Maybe it's that you love doing jigsaws, and the sense of completion or sharing it with someone that you care about is the thing that matters. So there's a sense of progress in what you're doing. There's a sense of mindfulness, and the third thing is that there's a sense that it matters. And if you can find people, places, and activities that bring you some or all of those things, you find flow.
Fantastic. Jack, we'll leave it there. Great to talk to you. Thanks very, very much for doing this. You're always a source of, in equal measure, information and inspiration, and I really appreciate it. So thanks a lot.
Legend. Thanks for having me.